Manny Rodriguez, who is our school board member, HISD school board member for this area, and so welcome. Manny's also a constituent. So thank you for being here, and past president of the board. I know one time I introduced you as president, but y'all revolve that around. So, but let me talk about the cap and trade, and let me finish on what little bit I'm.
The point of order. If there are questions, ask for constituents. Get kind of first crack at any questions.
I will do that as best I can, but like I said, I don't ask people to show me a picture ID with your address. We're not to that point yet. But I'm just for honor system. And last night it was so crowded. I asked people that if you're younger than me, you ought to get up and stand and let somebody older than me sit down. So if we have any of those that, you know, if there's an issue.
How old are you?
I'll be 62 in October.
Okay.
So anyway.
Anybody limping, I'll let you have my chair. I got to speak before you.
Okay, well, I'm going to stand anyway. But let me talk about cap and trade, and we'll get into the issues. And the cap and trade bill is not one I would have co-sponsored or introduced even. But since I'm on the committee, it came to our committee. And the issue of carbon control has been with us for a number of years. Actually, 10 years ago, President Clinton signed the Kyoto Treaty, which was a treaty of a lot of countries to that would control carbon emissions. The U.S. Senate didn't ratify that, so it's not our law, and it hasn't been. But I've noticed in the last 10 years, in our district, because one, we do have air quality problems. We have the Houston Ship Channel, and it's our job base and our tax base. But I also know I want every one of those industries, and I work with everyone. I've been on every plant site along the Houston Ship Channel. I want them to produce their product as clean and safe, because a lot of my constituents work there, and we do have a problem in the petrochemical industry with industrial accidents. In fact, we lost the BP explosion. I don't have that, and I don't have Texas City, but our folks, I lost a constituent that lived in Baytown, part of our district down there. So, and that's I'm going to be on them to clean up their processes, but I obviously want them to still be here, because again, that's our district. So that's why I wouldn't have co-sponsored or introduced a cap and trade bill, because my argument is if you think carbon emissions are bad, what about benzene? What about all the other stuff that comes out of our plants and our cars that we need to control, and we have a problem with controlling it? And we get more monitors in our area to monitor, so we can even trace back where the emissions are coming from, so we can problem solve with it. But like I said, that bill was introduced, and the chair of the committee is from California, actually Santa Monica, and I've joked with him many times. I said, I've been to Santa Monica twice, and I didn't see one refinery. And I said, but I have 5 in my district. So that's the difference between us. What we did, though, in the bill, let me finish. You know, you can raise your hand, but I'm going to have my say, and then we'll have questions. We had, the bill was introduced, and what it set up was, this reason it's called cap and trade. They would cap the amount of emissions from carbon, and then trade what it is, and that way raise money to pay for it. And so the only other solution to it is just do a carbon tax. In fact, a lot of folks in the U.S. Senate's even talking about that just tax whatever carbon, whether I use it in my truck or my car, or it comes out of one of our refineries or chemical plants or somebody's coal plant that we have. So that's probably a pure way to do it instead of cap and trade. The issue is, though, the only other group of countries in the world that have done anything to control carbon is Western Europe. And they came up with a cap and trade program that's not really effective. In fact, they'll tell you that it actually increases the carbon output because it's not really effective. So, but what there has been is around the world. I appreciate the applause, but you're taking up time and we need to get to the questions. But so that's where it came from. And what happened was that the bill, the way it was drafted, would have said, okay, industry. In this case, there was an EPA study a number of years ago on who emits carbon in our country. Refineries were estimated to emit about 4% of the total carbon into the atmosphere. We as drivers, when we drive our vehicles, we emit about 30% of the carbon in our atmosphere. Now, you know, this is an EPA study, and you know, whether it's true or false. I think it's older and not nearly as accurate as it should be. But every industry, obviously coal industry, they don't control their carbon. It's even worse than refineries, so it's much more. But what we tried to do, and I say we, there was one other Democratic member on the committee from Texas, and Congressman Charlie Gonzalez from San Antonio. And he has a very small refinery in his district, whereas we have a bunch. But we worked together to try and do amendments to that bill to moderate the impact of the cap and trade on an energy producing, refining, and a chemical industry district. We had some help on the chemical side, because even though we have a lot of chemical facilities, there are also other parts of the country that have them. Pennsylvania, other parts of the country have a lot of chemical facilities, whereas we have, at least the Texas Gulf Coast, Louisiana has predominantly the refineries in our country, although they're everywhere, but they're so. But anyway, so that was what. So we amended the bill, got enough votes, working with the chairman to say I can't vote for a bill unless you moderate what you're doing, and so we got a little over 2% of that 4%. So we got over half is a protection that will be given as an allocation to refineries. And so they will be able to grow in, and they will have to purchase a little less than 2% on the trading market starting in 2014. And that was one compromise. The other one was there was a low carbon fuel standard in the bill that we don't know how to make low carbon fuel. And so, but in 2014, they were going to require refineries to be the tax collector for what you and I buy from the fuel that we pick up. So what that would mean is that when you go to the gas station, whichever one you go, that refiner would have to say, okay, 30% of our carbon comes from vehicles. We're going to have to start collecting and buying credits for 30%. Let me finish. We'll get to the questions. And they will. Well, you know, you're taking up time, and I'm really got it. Those of you who have been here before, please know what and how we work it. So, anyway, so that's the issue. We got the low carbon fuel standard out of the bill, and we got a number of other amendments in the bill to moderate it on how it affects the energy industry. But you don't get those amendments in a bill unless you also say, hey, if I was just going to tell them I'm going to vote no, there's no reason for them to work with me on an amendment. And when the vote was counted in the Energy and Commerce Committee, even if Charlie Gonzalez and I had voted no, the bill would have come out of the committee. So we got at least half a loaf, and that's what compromise is about in the legislative process. So, well, if you know, I've been shouting a couple nights, and I'm not going to do it. We don't have a mic system, and I will deal with it. But anyway, so that's where cap and trade. It passed the House before Memorial Day. It's over in the Senate. I don't know when the Senate's going to take it up, because frankly, the Senate's been doing health care, and we don't know if it'll pass anyway. There's one thing in the bill that would, a number of things in the bill that has changed from the House bill that I would vote against. The one provision in there that's gotten a lot of flack is that if any country in the world wants to serve our market, whether it's China, India, Western Europe, Japan, if they want to have export to us, the products they export have to go through the same hoops for carbon control as ours does. Because prices are going to go up.
Stop giving us money.
Okay, whenever you're ready, let's finish. And the reason for that is I don't vote for free trade agreements. My first term in Congress, I voted against NAFTA. And I voted against every one of them, whether it be South Korea, whether it be normal trade relations with China, whatever. Because back sometime in the 80s, the first President Bush, carried on by President Clinton, and even the second President Bush, felt like that our country needed to have free trade agreements with lots of folks in the world. And free trade is okay, but it's not really fair trade. Because what happens in those trade agreements, in every one of them, is that they will protect, if you're an investor going to Latin America or Costa Rica or Korea, if you want to invest there, they'll protect your investment. They can't take it from you without going through some kind of process of law. What we don't protect is the blue-collar and industrial base in our own country. And every free trade agreement I've seen moves jobs from areas to other places that are happy to have a $1 an hour job or 50 cents an hour in China in some cases. So that's why if the bill comes back without that in it, I'm going to vote against it.